Hi, everyone, and welcome to Deep Geek Live. Welcome to the Westworld Pre-Show, episode 8. We are at the season finale, and I am delighted that I have my longtime collaborator and the most intelligent man to ever talk about Westworld, Hax Dogma. Do you want to say hi?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So glad to be back. Kind of sad, this is it for possibly 2 years, right? This is man, quite a moment, great season, and yeah, let's talk about it. Talk about whatever we have else to talk about.
Absolutely. And just in terms of timing, yeah, 2 years is what they've been
Yeah.
kind of working to, but with coronavirus, who knows? We've got season 4 confirmed. For anyone who doesn't know that, season 4 is confirmed. And I guess that means that given that they've got a little bit flex in the system, then maybe 2 years is still possible, but we don't know. But Hax, why don't you sort of kick off about last episode 7? What were your kind of overall thoughts?
Yeah, loved it. It was this like big revelation. It was huge, right? This was a huge part of the story, the fact that Project Solomon exists. This was something that before the season started, they had trailers on, literally showing us by name that Project Solomon exists in this world. And I think, like, we all knew of it, but kind of just imagined that it transformed into Rehoboam, right? The fact that it exists, the fact that it's an artificial intelligence and not just a simple machine that creates simulations and creates predictions is astonishing. And I think that maybe that applies to Rehoboam, and I think that yeah, I mean, it was that alone was like my favorite part, and the theories about that, what it could mean in terms of this like idea of ghost data, because it's essentially like ghost data in the real world is like when you leave your location on right on your Twitter, and years go by and then you forget about it. It's called ghost data. So it's like this is Surak's ghost data, and now it's coming back to haunt him, and it's like this really cool concept. I'm just fascinated with.
Yeah, and I would agree. The big reveal was about the fact that we've got not just Rehoboam, who is creating all of these possible alternative futures, but we've also got Solomon, who was doing the same thing and then was just effectively shut down, but could still create all of these ideas about the future and future paths and potentially also these simulations. So we've got these two different entities who are creating almost different gods, who are creating different realities. But let's take this back. We're going to go through episode 7 and trying to work out all the different clues, because there are a lot of clues we've got going on here. We started out, it was a cold open. We started out with the Musashi, Sato, who was there, and then Charlotte rang him up, and then we had this whole battle going on with Clementine and all the rest of it. So what's your take here? What's Charlotte's plan?
Yeah. So there's essentially two trains of thought, right? And it all determines, or it's all based off of like what her plan is, right? She has this new plan. I believe wholeheartedly that Dolores created 5 Doloreses and made them into their own people, allowed them to grow emotionally, to decohere purposefully, knowing that it would be so hard for this future telling machine to predict the future with so much divergence happening. And I think that Masashi's like, hey, this is this. Oh, you calling me means her plan's working, because this wasn't part of the plan. And so I think of it as this was also something that Dolores Prime wanted to happen, but Charlotte, assuming that she is still working for herself, and we don't really know what she's up to now that she's diverged from or decohered from Dolores, and I don't think she's working with Surak. So my take on this is that she's kind of just going after Surak alone, and maybe is using Musashi, right? Wants to create another instance where Musashi and Maeve can talk to each other inside of the simulation, like we saw with the Martin Dolores, or potentially some kind of like Trojan horse, tracker to know where this pearl is being sent, and then it would also allow her to go after it.
Yeah, I love that idea that maybe Dolores deliberately created lots of versions of herself to exacerbate the decoherence. So it's to make it more complicated for Rehoboam to try and figure out, because all of the Doloreses, they are these white spots. They are the bits that Rehoboam can't quite understand. And if there's lots of them, then that means that it's hard for Rehoboam to figure out what's going on. Now, in terms of what Charlotte is about, what's her plan now? She says that she revealed the Sato's information where he is to someone, and the implication is that might be either Maeve or Serac, because then we get Clementine, who is, it would appear this is the backup that Maeve was asking for. So do you think that Charlotte rang in some way Serac or Maeve and said, this is where Sato is?
I think so. I definitely think so. Like, this idea of like an anonymous tip doesn't seem so far, out of this scope of possibility. There's some wiggle room there with, like, because we know that last she was, burnt to a crisp, and now we kind of see like a reformed face with a little bit of scarring. I think that implies that she has access to a repair gun, and because I think all of that damage would be repairable, just to some degree, I guess, unless they're like missing an ear or something. But all of it seemed like cosmetically possible to repair for hosts. I think that it was probably just that straightforward. It was a tip left for Serac, and it created this path to do what she really wants. And I guess defining what she really wants is the biggest thing there. And yeah, either if it's not a Trojan horse thing or like some kind of tracker, I don't know. It's like it could really be anything. I love this idea that she's trying to get Maeve to talk to another version of Dolores to then like create some kind of something. Because like Maeve in this has to come around in some kind of way. Like she can't just like keep doing Serac's bidding. And I think that would also create room for that to be possible.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on board with this idea that Maeve is not just doing whatever Serac wants. We'll come on to Maeve in a moment. Let's finish off with Charlotte first. So Charlotte, she says that she's got another plan. She says Dolores wants all of the Dolori to die, but she's got a better plan. And then we get this attack, and then they cut off the head of Musashi Sato and take it away. That, to me, seems like they're actually trying to retrieve his brain pearl. So that seems to be what's going on there. What else do you think? There's any other levels to this other than Charlotte is trying to get some kind of revenge? Because on the face of it, what happened last episode was that Serac tried to kill her family, succeeded in killing her family, and then she took it out on Dolores. Is this something extra going on here? Where's the kind of? I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is there's a disconnect, because the Serac is the person she should be going after. Why is she going after Dolores?
That's a great point. So she could either interpret that bombing as Dolores is doing, which was something that we discussed, being possible at some point. But the other implication there, as you were speaking, is this idea of a voice changing technology was introduced this last episode, the same episode in which, she gets a a phone call from someone that we believe should not be working with Serac. I think it's really interesting to explore this idea of Project Solomon or Rehoboam in some capacity appearing to be that voice in your ear. So, you get a phone call and it's like, oh, hey, mom, go, go do this thing. In reality, it's Rehoboam. So I guess equally, it may be hinting at that. Both of these things were introduced in the same episode. I could see it. Again, I think Dolores right now is mastermind of this whole thing. I think that she knows exactly what she's doing.
Awesome. One final question before we move on from this. I mean, it was literally just like a 2-minute opening scene. Yeah. There was a briefcase. Oh. And this is the kind of thing that the Westworld showrunners love to do. Yep. It's like they do a bit of plot and then they like show loads of action, so you forget about the little bit of plot. But Musashi Sato had a briefcase and he got some kind of lackey and said, take this to our friend. The lackey seems to have got away with the briefcase. What was going on? Where was the briefcase going? What was in the briefcase? Have you got any ideas what was going on there?
I think it's going to Berlin. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's going to reveal everything that he was doing in Jakarta. We know that there was some kind of implication of recreating hosts with all the imported host milk. There was also this idea of smuggling that was happening with the Mortician and Maeve when they spoke. It definitely seems like 100% purposeful, right? Because that is exactly what happened. They were like, hey, real quick, if don't return, if you can't do this, don't return. And it just so happened that he survived because he left just then with this mysterious briefcase. So I think it's going to Berlin with maybe that interaction between this mysterious fifth pearl. And yeah, I think it probably has something to do with the recreation of hosts, or maybe the plot to live in Mexico. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm going with the Berlin fifth pearl thing. My take is that there are so many loose ends, literally like dozens of loose ends. Oh. They are not going to be able to cover all of these in this season. Some of them are going to carry on into season 4. My best guess is that the fifth pearl is the Berlin pearl, and that is Dolores. So whatever happens to Dolores this season doesn't matter. There is another Dolores, probably the Dolores who was in charge of everything, who was in Berlin. And what Musashi sent over was something to carry on the plot. It wouldn't surprise me if we never find out this season what was in that. So, yeah, it's one of those mysteries that we're probably not going to get to the end of. But we've got a couple of questions on the super chat. Saying Brittany L says, hey guys, thank you for your hard work. How are we so sure that Serac was the one who killed Charlores's family? I definitely think it was Dolores. So we had, after the explosion, we had a view of what looked like one of Serac's lackeys, just sort of like noting what was happening and going away. So that was why we think it was Serac. But Hax, have you got any thoughts on why it might not have been?
Yeah, so it's that is 100% his henchman that leaves that scene. We actually see him alongside Serac later on, or before, I believe. And so the ultimate theory about why it was Dolores was, founded in this idea that right before that happened, Dolores and Dolores, who was having this hard time relating back to the original Dolores, was saying, like, I feel like I'm slipping away from you, was having this emotional tie to this family. And before I believe that it was all part of Dolores' plan for them to diverge, it really felt like Dolores interpreted this as like, wow, this is like, I'm losing part of myself. I need to correct that. So the correction was to just get rid of the family. And it's possible, right? It's possible, but now I think it just works so much easier if this was Sir X-Men, and you know, but at the same time, it's like, why kill the family? If, does that mean that he knew all along? Or, there's a lot of implications there, but it's possible. But again, I think it's probably just Serac at this point.
Yeah, I think Serac is the favorite on that one, which takes Charlotte's reaction to the next level, because she's not just looking for revenge against whoever killed her family. She's looking for revenge against whoever came up with the idea that led to her family dying. So that is where we're looking at with Charlotte, is that she's not just about an instant reaction against whoever might have killed her family. It's a lot deeper than that. Let's go to, I'm sure I had another question here on the chat. If only I could find it. Yeah, so Carsten Page, this is, hey guys, thank you for all the fun videos this season. It makes it so much more fun. Fun question, which park would you visit and why? Yeah, good question. I think I would probably visit the one that we've not actually seen yet, but we know exists, which is Medieval World.
Oh, yeah.
Not because of the dragons, but because, yeah, I'm a big fantasy fan. I love it. So the idea that we could have a fantasy world would be amazing. What mean, Hax? Yeah. Which park would you go to?
Probably Warworld. I've played first-person shooter games my entire life, so the idea of like being able to play this video game without the risk of actually joining the military and just being able to do what I would do in Call of Duty instead of real military stuff. Yeah, I mean that sounds like the most fun part to me. Plus espionage, spies, Maeve wearing that outfit. I mean, whole 9 yards. It's got it all.
I think that's absolutely fair enough. We did have a couple of super chats before we went live, so let's deal with these right now. Taste Georgia, thank you so much for the super chat, saying, what happened to the dog that Charlotte Dolores stole? I hope he is okay. I hope he's okay. Yeah. My take, and we'll come on to this, I'm sure, slightly later, my meta take on this is that a lot of this was all in a simulation. And that may well have been, but in terms of what happened to him, she took him back to the family is the implication we've got. I don't think we're going to see more of him. Hax, do you think we're going to see more of that dog?
I was trying to think. I don't think we see him being loaded into the car before they leave. I think it's just one hand on each of the family members as she's running toward the car, but yeah, we probably won't see him ever again.
No. I mean, I Taste Georgia, I think that's the answer. I think that it was a cute dog. I liked the dog, but I don't think we're going to see it again. Maura Lee, thank you so much, Maura. I hugely appreciate all of your support across both of my channels, saying just a show of love, support, and appreciation for all the fabulous content and stories on both channels. Loving season 3 of Westworld, and would like to know who you consider the heroes or villains, if there really are any of this season, and why. In terms of the hero, I think the whole point for me with Westworld is that they don't have heroes and villains. We're supposed to work out or take the lessons about the kind of the who might be good, what might work, and we're supposed to think about them. And that, I think, is the whole point here. It's not that there are good guys and bad guys. Where we started with Westworld about the white hats and black hats, that's not where we're at now. It's about moving us beyond that to a slightly nuanced position on what is good and what is evil. But I mean, Hax, maybe you disagree.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I do think that, like, in broad terms that we can probably guess good guys and bad guys, but it seems like as soon as you do that, right, it's like that's when they know they got you. As soon as you start thinking that Dolores is chaotic good, and then boom, she's chaotic evil, and so I think that I will say that I do think Dolores and her plot this season is much more malicious than we think it is. I think that it's kind of been reshaped that she's just trying to create this, cult in Mexico of robots and, just live in peace and not be disturbed. I don't think that that's real. I don't think that is exactly what she would want. I mean, if that's what she wanted, I feel like a lot of the things that she's done could have been, not done. And because of that, and because I think that she's been manipulating Caleb for a lot of this, I think that there might be a big twist that's just like, yes, once again, I am trying to destroy humanity, and Caleb was the instrument of that destruction, and I think that would make her much more bad than Gray, right? But yeah.
Yeah, and chat, this is your moment to shine. I would love to know what you think in terms of the D&D alignments of all of these characters. Is Dolores really chaotic good, or is I mean, where do we go with all these characters? I mean, I don't know. Is what's Maeve? Is Maeve neutral? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the chat.
Yeah, I feel like so much of Maeve, and I really hope a lot of this is simulation, because they've like taken so much from Maeve, like as just like her own independent being and badass chick, just in herself, in control of the environment, and went from like Ford kissing her on the head saying, I love you, you're my favorite host, I put that inside of you, and then her saying goodbye to Akichita and her child, and then sacrificing herself for the other hosts, and then now she's just a pawn. And it's just like, yeah, man, please, like some kind of twist. Give Maeve the power back.
Maeve seems to have the power, but whether it's just the power within the simulation, we're going meta. We will definitely go meta at some point in this. Morally, thank you so much. Also asking, was the reason that Musashi's head was chopped off because Charlotte was after Dolores's pearl, and is Stubbs secretly a mole working for Zorak? We'll come on to Stubbs in just a moment, I promise. But in terms of Charlotte wanting Dolores's pearl, I mean, this is my big take, is that this opening cutscene, they didn't give us much, but the clear implication was that Charlotte's other plan was to gather all of the Dolores pearls. She took the one that was there from what's it? I've even forgotten his name now, but the other guy, the Hax, help me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was actually reading a comment.
Oh, that's fine. So the Connells is what I'm after. So she's already got the Connells pearl, and now she's grabbed the Musashi pearl, which means that along with her, she's already got 3 of these 5 Dolores pearls. So clearly her plan is something to do with like saving these pearls so they don't die. What do you think the plan is with all of these pearls?
There's something we talked about 5 episodes ago when we learned that Dolores created 5 of herself. This idea of like maybe the host data and what he's looking for, was split among these hosts. Like you couldn't, inherently destroy one because you need it to piece together everything back together, to create the encryption key or to create the forged data, something like that. And so maybe that was why she split into 5, because it's harder for that person to get so many of this data, or so much of this data together. And maybe it's maybe it's the assembling of that, or maybe it is the assembling of these 5 hosts to, band together against the main plan, or to, just simply analysis. I'm not really sure. I do like the idea of Dolores doing this on purpose, because it's so hard for this machine to determine, and as such, hiding that key amongst one of those hosts, or among all of the hosts, I think is really interesting.
My hot I don't know if there's hot take. I've had this take for 2 months now, so it's probably not very hot anymore. But my take is that the key, the encryption key, is in Bernard. The the other Doloreses, I think we've had so many hints from the showrunners that Charlotte as a Dolores is going to break away from the plan, that I think we have to now accept that that is what is going on, that she is going away from the main Dolores plan, and she is now gathering the other Dolores sort of brain pearls, and she is holding on to them so that they can survive. That seems to be what the plan is as a whole. What she wants to do with them after that, I don't know. Jay Gandhi, thank you so much for the super chat, saying any Emmy nominations you guys are expecting. I mean, I don't know. Personally, I don't spend huge amounts of time focusing on awards nominations, but in terms of who's excelled this season, I mean, I think it's quite hard. I mean, I think Aaron Paul, if I had to pick anyone out of this season who has done ridiculously well, as well, obviously the music every time absolutely is amazing. In terms of the actors, I think Aaron Paul has done an amazing job this time, because he has carried this idea of someone who doesn't know who they are, but they are summing up humanity within this new world. And then suddenly they're being confronted with something new. I think he's carried that beautifully. I mean, what's your take, Hax, in terms of who's done the best, if that's the best way of saying it?
Yeah, so in terms of acting, I guess honestly, no one's really stood out. Like, you think back to like season 1, you see Peter Abernathy going through his routine. Like, that is still one of the greatest performances of this entire show. I mean, hands down, it's so good. Just rewatch it right now. You'll just be like, wow, that was acting. In terms of awards, I think writing for episode 6, Decoherence, the scene with William talking to each other, it just so good. I mean, like a writer's dream to be able to do that. Honestly, so much time must have gone into that. It blows my mind. And it was, everything was perfect. It was witty, judgmental between each other. Just the businessman, the inside the park, outside the park, the child who was, questioning his existence, and so many good things. It was just, I think if any awards right now, it would be that season or episode 6 writing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been a lot of good episodes this season. I have to say, it's worked really well for me, and I know that the viewing numbers have been down, but I think that is the price of highbrow entertainment in many ways. I kind of accept it, is that it has lost people, and that's okay. And that it's a thing that I actually respect HBO for, that they have backed this, even though probably they realize that this is quite complicated. This is very elitist sci-fi, which is probably the wrong way of putting it. It makes it sound slightly more hoi polloi than I was wanting to. But this is good quality, and it warrants a second view to understand it, even by people who like you and I. We nerd over this. Even we have to look over this a couple of times to try and pick out every kind of detail that's there, and that for me is a mark of good quality art. The Clueless Fangirl, thank you so much for your super chat, saying with the €6.66, the devil's donation, Helen. That is the devil's donation. Thanks for giving us Hax, Robert. Discovery of 2020. I discovered Hax 2 years ago. Hax is not just a 2020 person. He is an amazing person. But Hax, I will allow you to accept all of the accolades for this if you wish.
Of course.
Let's go with David Mann, saying thank you for the hours of videos and entertainment this season. Really appreciate it, both of you. Hope you do devs next. Lots of people are saying devs to me. I've not seen devs. Hax, have you seen devs?
So I wanted to talk to you about this actually, because I saw someone posted it last episode, I think, that we spoke. I've watched about halfway through devs and loved it. I started watching it as soon as it came out. It is determinism. It is simulation theory. It is right up. This is in our wheelhouse, 100%. So yeah, I was going to say I'm definitely doing this, and it has an interesting ending from what I've heard, but with no spoilers, it's worth watching.
Okay, well, I will have a look at it, and then if it has another season, it sounds like it's coming to the end of whatever season 1 or whatever it's at the moment.
Yeah.
If it's worthy of another season, then I will consider covering it. And
Yeah.
it sounds like Hax is a fan too. And Megan B saying, no mention of the flash of Caleb and Francis in what looks like a prison. Was it in Caleb's flashbacks, or have we not seen his whole or real truth? Yeah, there was. I think this was in a pre-season trailer where we had what looked like Francis in a prison. So, I mean, what's your take on this, Hax? Have we seen this last episode, episode 7, seems to give us the Caleb backstory. Is there more to come?
So I don't think that there's more to come. I think that what may have happened here is an early shot that didn't get used for anything, maybe to like show or to like show this like change of his memories. Man, I don't think that it is. I don't know, because like there was theories that I had before the season started based solely around the fact that we see him in that jumpsuit eventually. So I would hate to see them like not include this because they changed it after the fact, like after the trailer had already come out. But I don't know, like shows have done that before. Shows and movies have like had scenes and trailers that just never happen in the show or movie. So it's possible.
Yeah, and the chat is giving me a lot of love over Devs, so I will definitely check out Devs. It sounds like it's on HBO, so I'll have a look. Don Helm, thank you so much for the super chat, saying, could Dolores's plan be to throw the human race into enough chaos that she can introduce hosts somewhere and both groups can rebuild together from nothing? Hosts are superior enough to be equals starting from nothing. This is so. I mean, we're going away from my script. I have, as always, I have my plan, but we're going to break away from this. So Dolores's plan. What is her plan to break humanity down so that everything's, because it does appear to be the case that everything's breaking down, that she can then introduce hosts and they're there at a level? Do you think that's what's going on?
Probably not. Like Don, I really like the point about this merging into chaos, right? Like it's so hard to do everything. Like right now, killer hornets are coming to America for some reason or something like that. I forget, but because of all this COVID stuff, it's hard to focus on any one thing. So like if the world goes into chaos and then suddenly hosts emerge as like individuals in the world, sure, yeah, it would make sense. But at the same time, a big motif of this entire series is, if you can't tell, does it make a difference? Hosts could live in humanity right now without chaos, without anything happening to be able to make that happen. And so that's the only reason I don't think this is happening. Is yeah, they are superior enough, but unless a host outright says, "Yeah, I'm a host," no one will know. They could live their lives, blissful, peaceful. And ultimately, that's what I think that Bernard wanted, right? Bernard wants to not, send the world into chaos for the host existence. They just want to not be oppressed, like everybody. So if they could do that, then I think that would be Bernard's ultimate goal. That's why I think that Dolores isn't just simply looking for this commune of her own. I think that she's throwing the world into chaos for something that's not explicitly so hosts aren't oppressed.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And we're going to look in the second half of this, we're going to look forward to what might happen in the finale. Let's move on. We've literally only gone through like 2 of my 20 bullet points here. So let's move on to William. We had this 2-3 scenes with William in this last episode when he was there And he seems to have come to this idea that he's the good guy now, that he is, he's discovered what his purpose is in life. And he seems to think that being the good guy means killing all of the hosts. Do you believe him, Hax?
I do. I think that what he's showing to us is like, the therapist wanted to talk to him about survivor's guilt and why he lived and his daughter didn't. And now we're seeing him take responsibility for funding the park that ultimately led to all of this. He feels responsible for this thing that ultimately wasn't really his fault, right? Like, I mean, well, he tortured Dolores, I guess, over 30 years and created this, but so did other hosts, or so did other guests, assumingly, I guess. But he feels responsible for this thing that ultimately wasn't his fault, and now he is becoming the good guy. And I think that stuff like this and feeling guilty shows that he is making legitimate change. But at the same time, a lot of people do view William as just strictly the bad guy of this. And I disagree with him, but
yeah, I still buy into this idea of William being in this long-term kind of, and I don't like the idea of a redemption curve, but that's roughly what it is. He hit rock bottom in this season, and he's now trying to claw his way up. He's trying to figure out what being good means. And right now, being good to him seems to be undoing some of the bad I did. And some of the bad he did was, in his mind, the creation of the hosts. So that seems to be where he's at. He's like, okay, there's not many hosts left. I can kill them all. That will make it better now. So yeah, I kind of believe that. That seems to be what he's wanting to do. Whether that equates to his "I'm going to save the world" thing,
yeah,
not entirely sure. But that's where he's at. He's just, if we do have this kind of like curve, I'm going to call it a redemption curve. What the hell? If we do have this redemption curve, then he was there and he's now just coming up here, and he's just understanding that there is a need for him to do something to make the world better. He might not be right about what that thing is, but the fact that he thinks that he has to make the world better is a good thing in and of itself. Petrol Dollar saying, Westworld promised me nudity. No nudity in season 3. I am triggered. Or am I too quarantined? Petrol Dollar, far be it from me to suggest it, but you may be too quarantined. There has been nudity, but if you want it, it is available freely for anyone who wishes to just type the right things in the internet. But Westworld is providing many, many delights other than that. Let's move on to Solomon. So we were introduced to Solomon in this episode. Mm-hmm. Solomon is the precursor to Rehoboam. Okay, I'll just throw it to you as a sort of an open pass here. What do you make of this? Solomon is a supercomputer. So what?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know. I mean, like, Dolores mysteriously knows that this is an insane AI, which I don't think that they would tell us that for no reason, right? Like, if it's an insane AI that's, outlived its purpose, then just can it, like you assumingly have, like Sir X assumingly has with the previous iterations of this build. But because we have Project Solomon, something that we knew transformed into Rehoboam, and there was a list of other names, I believe David was one of them, calls into question, is there more of this, right? Is there other giant sphere gods in this world that are somehow described as an insane AI? And yeah, exactly. How does an AI go insane? But, merging a little bit of sci-fi here, I think that ultimately we have to take its word that it is insane. We have to maybe figure out the implications of what that is. And does that mean that that the plan is, inherently insane because it is created by an insane god? Um, and yeah, Project Solomon, I'm glad that it's here. I think that there's a tiny bit of room for maybe Dolores has interacted with this before we're seeing her actually interact with this, just because of some of the things that she knows. This whole season, it seems like she's known so much more than it feels like she should have. And of course, she studied the books of humanity, so maybe I'm looking too much into it. But yeah, I'm still, weighing a lot of this on Dolores knows more, and Project Solomon and other of these future telling machines existing do give room for this theory to be right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that Dolores has, from quite an early point in time, had access to Rehoboam,
Yeah.
which means that she understands a huge amount. She also seems to have what the hosts generally seem to have. I mean, it's not been clear, but she can control other bits of mech. She can control her motorbike. She seems to be able to control the house that she went into right at the opening scene of episode 1, Jerry's house. She seemed to be able to lock that down. Now, it's not 100% clear why. That was hinted at, that I'm mechanical, that's mechanical, therefore I can log into it. I don't know. It's never quite made very clear. Maybe that's going to remain vague. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, she does always seem to have some extra knowledge. My best take is that it's because she's accessed Rehoboam in some way. We know that she did have access to Rehoboam, but this seems to set up a conflict between Rehoboam and Solomon. Now, on Twitter, for anyone who wants to follow either of us on Twitter, I'm sure you'll be able to find us. Just search for either Hax Dogma or in Deep Geek. But someone who I know has been on this channel, and I know you've been on his channel, certainly, Justin Thomas from Top Shelf Fandom, he put a picture up which I thought was fascinating. I don't know whether he was the first person to notice it or not, but we had and I saw Costume CO there. Maybe she can help us out on this. The jumpsuits or whatever they were wearing, Dolores and Maeve, they seemed to be in the same pattern as both Rehoboam and Solomon. Solomon has like straight lines going across it, and then Rehoboam is kind of like in zigzags. Do you think that meant anything, Hax?
It could point to this idea that Maeve is inside of, the simulation of Mirror World of Rehoboam, whereas Dolores is, maybe from the start been using this other system, this Project Solomon. Outside of that, I think it's just ultimately I don't really know what else it could be. It definitely feels purposeful, 100%. I actually, that like blew up on Reddit. Was the first place that I saw it, and the comments there were all over the place as well. I think one of the biggest things to take from it is their allegiance is definitely to these different systems, or whether they realize it or not. And I think it kind of fits with the theory of Dolores using this machine before. But yeah, and also while we're talking about Project Solomon, again, I want to bring up this idea of the voice changer, right? I think that's such a purposeful thing to include. It's such a weird thing to have this like God interpret, voices in any way that you want it to. And I think that some of the communication that we've been hearing with Dolores may have been her talking to Project Solomon, just masked as her own voice, just because it sounds better. It deceives us, but then they've given us this like kind of key to figure it out. So I think there's room for that to not be a gotcha moment.
Yeah, Costume CO. For those who don't know Costume CO, because I was name checking her earlier, she's got a fantastic channel here on YouTube, which looks at costumes, not just in Westworld, but across the piece, across a huge amount of excellent TV shows. And she is my go-to person when it comes to costumes and what they might mean. She says, yes, in Deep Geek, and I shared a picture of Robert. This is Robert's vest from season 1 with the bicameral mind pattern on, this is Ford's vest, on the bicameral mind pattern on his vest. So yeah, so it seems that this isn't just something they're doing just in this season. This is like a hint to what this person might be about or what they're trying to push. So yeah, have a look out for that, guys. That's one of those things that when we're going into the season finale, I don't think it's a coincidence. Petrol Dollar says, $20 bet that the Berlin host is Dollar Lawrence or Teddy Loris. Yeah, possibly, but my take is that that Berlin is the actual Dolores Prime who is managing all of this. Sheely NY, thank you for the super chat saying, come late and might have missed. Do you both still believe in the mirror world theory? We will come on to this. I definitely in the second half of this, but the short answer for me at least is yes.
Oh yeah.
So I want to finish off last episode before we get on to speculating about next episode. And let's talk about Maeve for just one moment. We've talked about how she was dressed. Whose side do you think she's on? Now, I think that there's a big clue here. When Clementine was in the opening scene, Clementine was just very clear, we can't be bought. And I think that, for me, makes it very clear she's not just on Serakh's side, which is what the Dolores character, and I say the Dolores character because the hint across all of this, I think that we are in a mirror world, is that somebody misunderstands someone's motivations. Dolores seems to think that Maeve is on Serakh's side. What's your take, Hax? Do you think that Maeve is on Serakh's side, or is she playing some clever game here?
You know, I think, like, I think that she, up until this last episode, when Clementine says, you know, that ultimate hint of, hey, like, there's more going on than you're being shown. You know, all we have been shown is that Maeve is genuinely in a position that she can't win, right? She gets turned off. She gets sent to a virtual hell in which time moves faster. So she could, you know, go through hell ultimately so much faster and then come back to the real world and ultimately be super changed because of that. You know, she is in such a terrifying position, and I think it could just be as straightforward as, you know, she is captured. She is working for Serakh out of necessity. And that was the picture. That was the broad strokes agreed upon picture until this line. And I agree that this line meant, you know, something huge, but I don't know how we get from her being completely under the thumb of Serakh to she has been actively, you know, making steps to get her outcome this whole time. I don't think that we've been really shown, like, you know, this like inspiring moment where she's like, oh, wait, he thinks I'm doing this, so this is what I'm going to do. Whereas, like, it feels like Dolores could be figuring out the motivations thing, where Serakh and Rehoboam are incorrectly guessing motivations. Well, actually, I mean, Maeve 100% in the simulation sees Lee Sizemore and his motivations being wrong, because the simulation thought it was because of love and lust that he helped Maeve, when in reality it was just because he thought he needed to. He wanted to be that better person. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it is entirely possible that Maeve is still in control in some capacity, but I feel like I feel like there's a lot that they need to show us in order to make us go, oh, okay, she has been in control this whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think Maeve, all through this season, seems not to have had huge amounts of volition.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work for me with Maeve. Maeve, the first two seasons, she's all about being in charge of her own actions. But this time, she starts out, she has an entire episode where she's like being played in some kind of simulation, and then she like seems to be going out doing what someone else wants to do. That's not Maeve. That is in no way what Maeve is about. She is very much in charge of who she is. So there is no way, in my view, that she is going to end up being just doing what Serac wants. She might be going along with it because she thinks that's how she can carry on exploring stuff and keeping alive and all the rest of it, but she is not ultimately tying herself to Serac's worldview or his objectives.
Yeah.
No, go on.
One other thing is that we see with Maeve a shot of this cradle-like structure in which there is a ton of these pearls going through. And, there was black and white, assumingly, good and bad. And Maeve was, I believe, a white pearl, or a white chestnut housing the pearl. But ultimately, I think that we were showing that for a purpose. And I think it could be iterations of Maeve, which would be interesting, which would have a lot of implications that I'm not too sure about. But yeah, I think I agree 100%. Maeve needs that redeeming I am still my own person moment. And I hope that we see that. I just don't know yet if we will.
Yeah, I think you tweeted about this idea that all of those pearls, if you cast your mind back to episode 2, 3, whatever it was, when we first get Maeve and we like zoom back out again and we notice that she's in this simulation, there's lots of these brain pearls in whatever laboratory it is, and we never see whose they are. Now, I think you were correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were speculating that all of these might have been Maeve, and that this was Serac trying to game how on earth am I going to get Dolores? I mean, if that's right, and I don't think I would disagree with you actually on this one, then that means that what we're seeing is just lots of versions of Maeve trying to do what Serac wants, but each version still retaining her own independence, and so at the end of it, probably not doing what Serac wants. But is that what you're thinking, Miles?
Wow. Yeah, 100%. Because now think about like this idea of multiple Doloreses, and we've had this idea of multiple hosts for a long time, and it said that if they were ever going to do this, they need to do it like once and then not abuse it. So what if they do it all in one season, right? What if there is multiple Doloreses? What if there's multiple Maeves? And ultimately, the reason I think that this could be multiple Maeves is that, we've never seen Serac with the quest for immortality. We've never seen him care about the hosts. He's never, there was some mention of, or some hinting of multiple hosts being taken from the park when we saw the bodies in cold storage laying on the ground. And then it outright happens later on. But, multiple Maeves in a simulation kind of makes sense because they show this scene, and I don't think it could be really anything else other than that. Though at the same time, it's like, are they preparing for, are they preparing for the Maeves to break out every single time like they did like she did and gun them down? It'll be interesting, but yeah, I don't know. I think multiple Maeves could work in that. And I think that we do need some clarity about that scene. Firstly, where it is and how that relates to Serac's master plan. I feel like that is such like a layer scene. Like he is in like his layer of doom or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I agree absolutely with this. I think that what we are seeing, we will come on to this in the second half, but what we are seeing is not all actually what happens. We're seeing a lot of different simulations, and part of this is Serac trying to simulate all the different ways that he might stop Dolores, because he thinks that Dolores slash Caleb will end the world, destroy his vision, and all the rest of it. And he thinks that Maeve is the way to stop this. So I think that what we're seeing, certainly to start with, is him working through Maeve as a possible solution. The scene we get with her going out confronting Musashi, I think that was a simulation. I think it's entirely possible that her going out to confront Dolores was also a simulation. So I think that we're seeing lots of possible futures mapped out by Rehoboam through Serac's control of Maeve's brain pearl at the beginning. So I think that it seems to me what seems to be happening. But we'll move on to like tinfoil speculation in a moment, because that's, I don't know whether that counts as tinfoil, but you know, that's just a thought. Fras F Sahati, thank you so much for the super chat. I didn't see a question attached to that. If you do have a question, if one of the moderators could try and highlight it for me, that would be fantastic. I've got one other question for you. Hax, you're my technical genius, so you will be able to answer this one.
Okay.
An EMP machine.
Yeah.
Now, this is an electromagnetic pulse, as I understand it. And the idea here is that this is a thing which, when you trigger it, it zaps out and all electronic devices just shut down. Now, this seems to have been set there as a way to stop Solomon from getting out in some clever way, from escaping where he is. And then Dolores uses it to get out of her fight with Maeve, because she was frankly losing. And then she like whacks it. And the two of them and Solomon shut down. Mm-hmm. Is that right? And if so, are there any extra implications of what actually happened there?
Yeah. So firstly, really weird that you know, they like have this machine that, you know, they keep around, but fear that because it's insane could one day leave this place, and so they have an EMP. Yeah, like an EMP is interesting because like equally they could have just unplugged it, like they could have just turned the power off, the giant, you know, red button. But yeah, so with an EMP, like, and you know, by no means an expert on this specific technology, but I interpreted this as it's dead, right? When you have a hard drive, when you have an SSD, any electronics like that, if it is on, it fries the circuit, and that's it. Like you can probably forensically maybe get some of that data back, but I think that you know is maybe what happens. But at the same time, I interpret this as they may very well be dead. Like this may be a real scene. This may be that moment in which, you know, this version of Maeve and this version of Dolores actually die, because ultimately there is other versions, and maybe there is more Maeves, right? You know, I think it's such an impossibility that they both die right here that it makes me question, maybe they really do. Like there's something up. And as far as like other implications, you know, downstairs was a colossal just tomb of bodies, right? All described as being in a state of alive, but you know, not really alive. And the fact that just like this EMP goes off, and like, I mean, I didn't even think about the bodies that were down there until long after, but I 100% think that all of those are dead. And you know, Dolores, like we get the scene with Serac ordering all of the cold storage hosts to be burned. In a kind of juxtaposition, we see Dolores flip the switch and kill all of the humans in cold storage. And I think that there's something really poetic about that. And it's like kind of just added into the overall mix of things. And I think that they purposely called it a military grade EMP for one reason, is to show its strength, like to show that you're not walking away from this if it goes off, to show there is real finite issues that happen when you press this button.
So, I mean, for the less technical among us, an EMP, does it just shut down things? Does it wipe stuff? So is like, let's take Dolores's brain pearl or Maeve's brain pearl. Can someone just like take that out and rebuild them? What's the deal here? Is it death, or is it just like a shutdown that you can restart?
Yeah, so like if our computers are running and an EMP goes off, it's death. We're probably not getting that back without some kind of forensic approach. And like, I mean, that is like digital forensics in the sense of like maybe getting some of your hard drive data back. But your circuit boards are going to fry, your monitors are dead. It goes to the very circuit board, and I forget, it's either transistors or capacitors, but it essentially fries those, and nothing works. And it is, really up in the air whether that, Dolores and Maeve are susceptible to that. I think it's really interesting that they both collapsed. I think that means that their thing was fried. But at the same time, it is sci-fi. It is a technology that doesn't exist, with pearls and this like silly putty contraption, so it may not affect them at all, right? It could just be it could be like the connection between the pearl and the rest of their body is severed, whereas the pearl is fine, but they just can't, do anything. That's why they collapse. So there's room for them to be alive, but
so there's some wiggle room, but
yeah.
the implication is that this has wiped them, and also all of the human outliers who are in cold storage, who are in some kind of cryogenic chambers. The implication is that they are also killed in some way, unless someone comes and saves them, because presumably somebody could come and sort it out within a certain amount of time. But let's move on to a couple of random questions that I've got from the last one, the last episode, which I've been slightly uncertain about, and I'd love your takes on these hacks, because last episode they threw so much random stuff at us that it was just like flying all over the place. So one of the things you may have missed if you were just like watching like a normal person, not like us people who watch it over and over again, when we had William there with his stuff, all his details were appearing on the screen, and there was, first of all, it said that he's dead.
Yeah.
Secondly, his ID number was the same as Caleb's ID number. Now, there's a couple of things there. I'm going to put to you that the dead thing was just showing that the system decided that he wasn't going to get it out. So he's not dead. That's not a hint that William is dead in some way. And the fact that those two numbers were the same were because Stubbs, who I think is a mole, was mucking around with all of the different interfaces. But I would love your take on this, Hax, on either of those points. What do you think was going on with William?
Yeah, so I definitely agree. He's pronounced dead because of they were going to move him to cold storage, or maybe just outright kill him. Because we do know that some have gone to cold storage. We don't know that some have not died. So I think it could be either. I also think that it's interesting with the classification between Caleb and William. There's actually, I was able to find 3 screenshots that show this. One there is that single digit right in the middle is a 1, and 1 is an I, and Caleb, I believe, is an I. And one of the scenes that was describing William described it also as an eye, or showed it as an eye. So there is a scene where it matches completely, a scene where it doesn't match at all, and part of me really think it's continuity. It might just be an issue with development. It seems like it's such a tiny thing. I don't like, because the implication there is that maybe they're, transforming William to Caleb or Caleb to William, and I don't know where that goes. I don't know how that story plays out at all. Um, you know, maybe there's something there, but at the same time, it seems like nothing comes to mind about why, right?
Now, I mean, I agree. I don't think they're the same person. I don't think that's what was being put here. I don't think that there's any chance that Caleb is young William in an alternate timeline or anything like that. I don't think that's what's going on. It seems to be either, as you say, just like a continuity error, which is possible. I mean, we associate Westworld with an attention to detail, but everyone's human and sometimes they do make mistakes, so that's possible. Or it was, as I say, it was someone mucking around in the system and just conflating two different profiles. And as they were conflating two different, they were looking at different profiles, and we did have Stubbs looking at William, and then also later on we've got looking at Caleb. So yes, maybe they just got the two numbers mixed up. That's entirely possible. That's my best guess. I don't think that they are the same person.
Yeah, and the other thing is that it could be showing like how similar, right? Like this idea of turning these unclassifieds into a more manageable person, and because of that, how similar those manageable people are after they leave this reconditioning, the reconditioning program.
Yeah. Rui Gerd says, don't worry about the pronunciation, Robert. Thank you. So I'm going to go with Rui Gerd. What did Solomon want to warn Caleb about? Will the outliers, if alive, become Caleb's followers? Well, on the second one, possibly. The first one, for those who missed it, was that just before Dolores triggered the EMP and shut everything down, then Solomon comes up with the plan, his grand plan. It comes out in some kind of little drive thing that Caleb picks up. And then Solomon says, I do have to warn you that. And then everything shuts down. So the question is, what did Solomon have to warn Caleb? I mean, the context seems to imply that, this is a bad thing. Is that, okay, we've got this grand plan, but you should probably be aware that you will die, or lots of people will die, or bad things will happen. It's not all a beautiful plan that everything goes to plan. What's your take, Hax, on what might be? We don't know is the honest answer, but what's your take on what this might be?
Yeah. So Dolores asks this machine to create the plan that Jean-Mi created right before he died 15 years ago. We don't know how she knows that. We don't know what that plan is, but we have to assume it's something bad, and we have to assume that it's probably not good for humanity. I think that he is, like, the machine is saying, hey, or I'm sorry, previously, like moments before, the machine outright tells Caleb that this plan is not good. Like, the odds of you surviving is not high. And he acknowledges that. He accepts that. So I don't think the machine is telling him once again, like, hey, you're going to die if you do this. I think 100% it's warning of this. You may not understand this plan fully, and you're going to carry it out, and I'm trying to warn you about that. And I think that points to, again, Dolores' manipulation, or, again, just strictly that he is about to be a pawn, or, believe that he's a queen, like a past pawn becoming a queen, when in reality it was all Dolores' plan, right? And I think it's something there. I think ultimately the warning was that, and yeah, the other aspect of the people in cold storage is, like someone said, one of the most common replies to my theory about them being dead was that Caleb will need people to, create this revolution. So there's maybe some wiggle room that it's those people, these like huge outliers that could present such an issue to the world. But at the same time, I think those people are just dead. I think the logistics of having all those people and how he would somehow lead them, I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, this is effectively cold storage. These people is down there. I like the idea that they're there just because maybe they will be able to help Jean-Mi, or experimenting on them might help Jean-Mi in some way. But I don't think we know it. For me, the whole point is to create this idea that there's lots of frozen humans in the way that there were lots of effectively frozen hosts. I've got one final question on last episode, which is about Serac. Now, we saw him appear in a kind of like a hologram, as he has many times. He kind of appears as a hologram. And he seemed to be there talking just to Jean-Mi, on the assumption that this is Jean-Mi who's going to be listening to it. And he says something along the lines of, I'm sorry that I can't be there in person to greet you, having come the assumption that Jean-Mi has come through all this program and has passed it and all the rest of it. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but the person who I used to be is no longer there. Now, this seems to me to completely back up this idea that lots of people have had through this season, that actually Serac is not a normal human. He is some kind of projection from Rehoboam. And so whereas Jean-Mi seems to be very much associated with Solomon, Serac seems to be very much associated with Rehoboam. And so we've got these two brothers with these two competing systems. Did you read that much into it? Or did you read more into it than I did? What's your take on that one?
Yeah. So whereas we see that Project Solomon, has this artificial intelligence with only voice, I think it's entirely possible that Rehoboam, being this upgraded system, also has video, right? Voice and video, the natural progression of IT. And yeah, we are seeing the avatar of Rehoboam, as Serac. Or the other implication is that Serac is, inside of this machine. I think that both are possible. When the season first started, I think both of us, Robert, you and I, were kind of apprehensive about this idea of Serac being anything other than real. Just because it's like there's a lot to work with, but I do like what it's become now. I do like this idea that maybe he is a part of the system, and kind of turns him into this god, and then turns him into this like an even more evil thing that Dolores is trying to take down, because he's so blasphemous to assume that he's God, to take the image of this thing and make it his own. So I think there's cool things to work with there, but ultimately, yeah, like when he says, this is not the version of me that, God, what does he say? That we wouldn't be meeting like this. I think it ultimately points to he has either uploaded to Rehoboam, or Rehoboam has taken the avatar of Serac.
Yeah, I think the takeaway, however this is set up exactly, we don't know, but the takeaway is that Jean-Mi is the representative of Solomon, and that Serac is the representative of Rehoboam. We don't know exactly how literally to take that yet, but that seems to be what's going on. And that sort of cut all the way back to where we were at with the costumes of Maeve and Dolores, there's also a hint that perhaps they're being representative of those two. So maybe this last episode is going to be a sort of a play between these two supercomputers and their representatives. But we will come on to theorizing about the next episode in just one moment, because roughly halfway through this, as we always do, we just have a quick look to see what's coming up on each of our channels. Hax, do you want to just briefly say what's coming up on Hax Dogma?
Of course. So we'll be doing a recap for this episode. I may do a live stream on the channel, kind of the first time ever, just to go over everything that's happened during the season and kind of digest any last minute theories and theory craft what we have for season 4, something like that. But still up in the air. Outside of that, I also just became an affiliate on twitch.tv, and you can find that at twitch.tv/Hax Dogma. And I do gaming channels. I do video editing, audio editing whenever I'm working on video, stuff like that. And I would love to see any of you there anytime.
These are very exciting things, Hax. So you're doing your first live stream on your own channel. I'm delighted about that. Do let me know when that is. I will happily send people over there.
Awesome.
And also Twitch. It's not something I've ever experimented with, but I'm again very happy to send people over there. In terms of this channel, if you like what I do with Westworld, you may also be interested in what I do with The Lord of the Rings and also A Song of Ice and Fire. There are links in the description to my videos on both of those subjects. Or if you like classic science fiction, then you might also be interested in my second channel, which is called The Well-Told Tale, where I am audio narrating what I consider to be the finest science fiction and fantasy stories ever written. At the moment, we're working our way through The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, the original, the classic that spawned so many films and TV shows and all the rest of it. If that is something that interests you, you've never actually read the original, then please do go and check out The Well-Told Tale. Again, there's a link down in the description. We had one other super chat talking about the EMP, saying, this is from Rafael Pelic, saying, right before EMP, Dolores' eyelids are trembling and there is a sound like something is uploading to her mind. What do you think about that? Well, I have to admit I didn't spot that. So I'm not 100% sure. It would not surprise me in the slightest if Dolores has got a second plan going on and she is passing information over, as I say, to, I think, another Dolores that we have yet to see, who is probably in Berlin. But Hax, did you spot this sound of something uploading?
I did not. I did not at all. I remember she looking at Project Solomon and ultimately getting the the indication from Maeve that she needs to push this or she's going to die. Both of us die. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It may deserve some analysis, but yeah, on first watch or second, third, fourth watch, I didn't pick that up.
Okay, and Logan, thank you so much for saying that the Well-Told Tale link in my description is broken. If you're watching this live, do not click it. If you're watching this later, I will make sure I fixed it. But let's look forward to next episode. This is the season finale. There's a lot going on, and I think I looked and I can't remember. I think it's Insider, wherever Kim Renfro writes, had an article with 40 questions that have to be answered in the final episode of Game of Thrones, and with respect to Kim, who is an excellent writer, I think there's at least 2 times that. There are many questions that have to be answered in this final episode. So it's quite hard to know where to start, other than to say that I know, or I'm pretty sure, not all of our questions will be answered in this episode. There's, compared to seasons 1 and 2, there is a lot here. It's almost as if they're now building up to the idea that this isn't just this season, there is another season coming. So I don't think we need to expect every single question to be answered, which will be frustrating because it's going to be at least 2 years till we get next season. But I don't think we're going to get everything answered. So, but let's come back to where we started this episode. In terms of Dolores's plan, because this is a lot of what has been driving this season. Dolores seems to have been the main protagonist who's been pushing forward the plot all the way through this. What do you think she actually wants? Bernard has always been, pardon me, Bernard has always been about this idea that she's about destroying humanity. I'm coming around to the idea that actually she's not. Actually, that's not what her end game is. She's not about destroying every human ever. She's seen that some humans are actually not evil. She actually is maybe trying to get humanity and the hosts to have a new start. But what's your take on what Dolores's big plan is?
Yeah, before the season started, and we got the trailers about Caleb and Dolores, we spoke about this change in Dolores and this, because we know that not all humans deserve to die. We know that, from an outsider's perspective, the top 1% of the world was going to this park, and that's what she saw humanity as. So, we agreed that they would need to show Dolores changing and maybe becoming more sympathetic. And I agree in a storytelling standpoint that needs to happen. I don't know if we've seen enough to show that has happened yet. I think that, and it may be, my conjunction fallacy of believing Dolores to be manipulating Caleb early on. That's maybe pointing to this, because it could be, interpreted as a legitimate friendship being built, a legitimate, show of affection and camaraderie between a human and host that ultimately make this change. But again, I don't know if we've seen that. And I just, this idea that Dolores is still like, posing as maybe becoming more good and maybe becoming, less anti-human, I think may all still be a facade, and Bernard may be the only one who knows her true intentions, but I don't think he fully realizes them yet. And I think that part of his, early on with the memory and him being altered by Dolores, I think that will come back and ultimately once again show that that Dolores is not, making morally good, ethically good steps, human-wise, host-wise.
So your take is that Dolores is, the bad guy is the wrong, perhaps slightly too simplistic a way of saying this, but she is trying to, as she said in season 2, it's not like they've been trying to hide this, but as she said in season 2, to just destroy humanity. Is that, in a nutshell, where you think she's at?
Yeah, so what she says is undo humanity in season 2. And the purposeful nature of that, man, I just because again, she's not, I'm going to kill all humans, right? But the implication when you first hear it, when you realize what she's gone through, all of this, you're like, oh yeah, dude, she's going to kill. Humanity's done for. But I think that there's wiggle room. And in a sense, she has undone humanity. She has, broken apart the society of the world, taken apart this globalization with insight. She has undone what humanity is currently. So maybe she's already accomplished that. And maybe she is that, good, quote unquote, good force that is trying to, break the chains of humanity and also live with herself and the other hosts, not oppressed by anybody. It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. My view is that she was not expecting what she experienced when she got out into the real world in season 3. So she whatever she had expected at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
The actual world that she experienced was not that. Now, that probably meant that she had to change what it was that she wanted. And I think personally that she did genuinely look at humanity and see it as quite similar to the hosts. She did see normal people having their lives dictated to. And so I think that what she is trying to do is, in her mind, free humanity. Now, she's very happy to kill humans. It's not right, it's pretty honest that whenever some human gets in her way, she will just shoot them and kill them. That's not a problem to her. She doesn't ever cry about it. But at the same time, she is trying to free humanity, it would appear. If we take the release of the data at face value, as I think we should, yes, it may or may not be actually in the real world. We'll probably come onto this when we talk about the simulation in just a moment. But freeing people from the yoke that is burdening them does seem to be a large part of what she is about. And central to that is Caleb. Now, I think this is the next thing I would love your views on, is what's happening with Caleb in the next episode. So he's been told in this last episode that everything he knew was wrong. He had this whole experience that was replaced by some fake memories, and now he hates the idea that Rehoboam Serac effectively made him kill his best friend, and he's looking angry. What do you think he is going to be doing in the finale? We see a few in the promo. We should say we see a few pictures of him walking through rioting crowds and all the rest of it, but then also ending up captured by Serac. So what do you think is going on there?
I think that man, I don't know. I think that Caleb interacting with Serac in this final moment, kind of showing, hey, you are the person that was oppressing humanity, controlling our lives, maybe to show, maybe to sympathize with Serac in some kind of way, maybe to, the whole thing is that, so the end of humanity, I'm losing my voice, I'm so sorry.
That's not a problem. I'm happy to take over if you just want a moment. I think that you're good. Okay, well,
sorry. Yeah, so like this idea of him leading the revolution, being this figurehead. I don't think that we're jumping to the point in which he is this, leader of the revolution. I think that he will, in some kind of way, usher in the end of humanity, because Serac has the simulation, and they had this issue with the simulation. It showed in about 200 years, everything ends. And it was never described why. It has only been described as, a little bit when Maeve and Serac talk to each other, and he says, I've foreseen the host coming to the real world for years now. I've known about it for years. It's humanity that kills itself. Like he doesn't say that exactly, but it's humanity that I fear, and like he always has. And I think that points to the reason that Caleb is there. I think that this is all a part of that pinnacle moment in which humanity is going to cease to exist at some point. And I think that him being here is possibly him becoming a martyr, right? Like him being the one that breaks out of his chains to, confront his master, essentially, who has controlled so much of his life, and then him being executed or dying for the cause. And how people see that, how he, that ultimately becomes him being a martyr, I'm not sure. If that's televised or something like that is what I mean. But I don't know why Caleb has any special skill set to do anything other than, be someone who is wholeheartedly good, who wholeheartedly deserves to have a better life, to not be oppressed, and then show how evil this person is by just executing him on the spot. And of course, like, this idea of execution is coming from the trailer of him like with a gun to his head kind of thing. So outside of that, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So Caleb is an outlier. And this is a slightly vague concept we have, but basically an outlier is somebody that the machine cannot predict. So we have to accept that they will do unpredictable things at some point. Now, he appears all the way through episodes 1 to 7, basically to be working to the personality, his changed personality that he's been given. Now, in episode 8, finally, he seems to be freed of this. So the question is, what does he do? Now, the implication is that he follows whatever plan it is that he's been given in that little zip drive or whatever it was. And some of this from, one of the scenes that, or the shots that we had in the preseason trailers, and it's always fascinating which shots they leave all the way through. This is the stuff they took from the later episodes, because the majority of it is from the first few episodes. But one of them seems to be of Caleb helping Dolores get back together again, basically rebuilding her. So that seems to be the first part of whatever plan this is. Then he goes wandering around in some way, and then he gets caught in some way. The bit that fascinates me is that Serac, on catching him, doesn't just kill him. Because if it's just a matter of this is the person who might destroy the world, then why doesn't Serac just kill that person and that's done with?
Yeah.
He seems to put him in front of a supercomputer and like try and persuade him of something or show him something or something along those lines. And he seems to have possible spoilers here, but it was in the trailer. He seems to have Maeve hooked up to that same supercomputer, which adds to my conspiracy theories that a lot of what Maeve's been going through has actually been her doing simulations. But I think what we're seeing is Caleb being taken to a point where he has to make a choice. He has to make a decision. And my big thought about all of this season is this is about humanity can be better. And Rehoboam's big blind spot in all of this is that it doesn't understand that humanity can improve. We've had so many times through this season, excuse the rant, but I'm going to go off on one. So many times through this season, we've had characters misunderstanding somebody else because they think that they're worse than they actually are. We had in the episode with Maeve in the simulation, the reason Maeve knew she was in a simulation because the computer got it wrong about what was going on with Lee Sizemore, thought that he did something just because he wanted her, but in fact it was because he was just doing the greater thing. We've had Musashi tell Maeve that she abandoned him in Shogun World, and actually she's like, nope, I didn't. That was actually, I gave you a free choice to do that. We've had loads of different times when that was the case, when somebody said to somebody else, you're just this. In fact, even in the last episode, we had Clementine there with Musashi. Musashi says, you're just doing what Serac wants, and you can be bought. And she says, nope, I can't be bought, neither can Maeve. And it's like, again, we're getting this reiteration of this idea that the machine underestimates the capacity for people to be good or to be better. And I think that fundamentally we're going to come down to the machine, Rehoboam, not understanding that humans can be good or can improve or can be better. So that, for me, seems to be where we're heading. And I think Caleb, possibly also William, but mainly Caleb, is going to be the focus of that. he is going to make a decision that is going to confuse Rehoboam.
Totally agree. Yep, totally agree.
Awesome. Okay. In that case, if you totally agree, we'll move on to Charlotte, because we picked up on Charlotte a moment ago.
Yeah.
Charlotte has got a part to play in all of this. So she is. It's been heavily trailed, but she is moving away from being Dolores, and that's the Dolores pearl is in her head, but she is moving away from it. She is becoming more Charlotte in some way. What do you think this means? How will this actually impact on things?
Yeah, so I think, and along with Rehoboam not being able to understand humans change, I think the same kind of Achilles heel is going to exist for hosts and their emotions. You know, Charlotte develops a relationship with these people that the real Charlotte Hale could not have, and the machine is making predictions about this Charlotte Hale, this version of Charlotte Hale, thinking that it's human, and of course, those being far from reality. We get the nod to that when the phone call ultimately alerts Serac to her being Dolores, and I think that equally, like, because they are, because these hosts are being interpreted as the white spaces in this algorithm, ultimately just more with emotion, more with motivation. Charlotte becoming her own person is a part of Dolores's plan in some kind of way, and I think that whether Dolores knows what Charlotte is going to do, or whether Dolores Prime knows what Charlotte is going to do at this point, may not exist, because if she could figure it out, then Rehoboam also could maybe figure it out. But ultimately, I think it's because it's random, because it is harder to predict. Charlotte's plan is probably the plan, right? Probably the end all be all for hosts, and will ultimately get us into season 4 and the rest of the season with hosts coming out on top in some kind of way. How we get to her kidnapping, or her leaking knowledge of Musashi to Serac, and that happening at the end, I'm not sure. But ultimately, I think that Charlores's plan is the end all be all plan that they're going with now.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So what she seems to be doing is collecting back these pearls, these brain pearls that Dolores had kind of spread around the place. She's now collecting them back up again. Dolores seems to have decided that they're all expendable. Charlotte seems to have decided that they're not all expendable. So I think that we will see them carry on into next season. I think that makes a huge amount of sense. We had a few super chats, so let's just quickly pick up on them. Too High to Die, thank you so much, saying, so that USB needs to be manually uploaded to Rehoboam. So this is picking up on this idea of the plan that Solomon came up with, that and it kind of like created a little zip drive, USB drive, whatever it was, that Caleb picked up. Do you think that needs to be uploaded to Rehoboam in some way?
I have not thought about that until you said that. I think that's a great possibility. Maybe how they interpret a plan, or like what that looks like. Because like, how do you plot the future? What does that look like on paper, on VR? How do you do that, right? We don't know how that's how Serac is making these changes, how he's interpreting the data to understand it himself. So this idea of maybe we don't see that, maybe we don't see this plan ever. It is just simply get this flash drive to Rehoboam, and it takes over. It's misinformations, some things. Interesting concept. Yeah, I'm down. I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I think that its primary purpose is to be the plan whatever it is that Solomon was wanting, and I don't think we necessarily should assume that this is a good plan. We've had lots of flagging up that maybe this computer isn't necessarily working for the betterment of everything, of humanity. Maybe it has some kind of weird understanding of what I can't even remember what it was told it was supposed to deliver to start with, but it was that it may have some kind of skewed take on what that means, that actually is not that the human race will survive. Fras F. Sahati, thank you so much, saying, give a shout out to my man. Love you both in Deep and Hax. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that. And then saying the encryption key is in Bernard's head. So we'll come on to Bernard in a moment. So if you don't mind, I will pick that one up in just a bit. But I think the short answer to that one is I agree. And Vigstable saying, do you think Charlotte was the one to bring Stubbs into play? Perhaps she is actually still the real Dolores after season 2. So in terms of the real Dolores after season 2, no, I don't think so. For the simple reason that the Charlotte that we see what had to be told the plan, had to be told who she was and what was going on and all the rest of it. So the Dolores Prime, at least how I conceptualize Dolores Prime, is the Dolores that was in Westworld and then escaped out, pretending to be Charlotte. That host knew everything that was happening. That host came out, figured out a plan, and then that host created other hosts to tell the plan to. So the Charlotte that we see, the host that is Charlotte, does not seem to be Dolores Prime, does not seem to be that original host. It seems to be a host that had to be told what the plan was. So in terms of the second half of your question is there, you also asked, do you think whether Charlotte was the one to bring Stubbs into play? Let's talk about Stubbs, actually. It's a good segue here. My take on Stubbs is that he is the mole. Serax hinted heavily that he has another mole going on, someone else who's working for him. Stubbs has been suspicious ever since the moment that he couldn't shoot his own head. In my view, at least. I think that he seems to be working for someone, and if I had to guess who that was, it would be Serac rather than Charlotte. So I don't think Charlotte started out with this grand plan of how she was going to defy Dolores Prime. I think that Serac, however, did have a grand plan of how he was going to defy Dolores Prime, and I think that it makes sense that actually Stubbs has been working for him. But Hax, what's your take on Stubbs?
I think it's possible. I think that him working for Serac would be an interesting twist. You know, him, because he kind of takes over the computer, right? In this last episode, William, Bernard, and himself are talking, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I've kind of looked for personnel in the park, and so I'm qualified to analyze this machine." Something felt really off about that, and I think that was probably the most, for me, the most evidence that he was placed there for some reason by somebody else. And I think that Serac would make a lot of sense. I think if there is timeline play, I think that Dolores doing this could maybe fit in there in some kind of way, because there's this idea of Dolores and Dolores Prime now at odds with each other, and then it kind of reshapes the scenes as maybe odd. But yeah, there's more as more time goes on. I think that there's probably less timeline play. We're not going to see some past to present jump. We may see what happens directly after leaving the park and then fill in some of the gaps there. But something does seem off with Stubbs. I think it's, if he is working for anybody, it's probably most likely working for Serac.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. And I think that the fact is that if we accept there's no, as you say, no timeline play, and I think that's where we're at. We can't say for sure on Westworld, but I think that the trick this time, if that's the right way to say it, the trick this time is what is in a simulation and what isn't, rather than are we watching things happening in the past. That implies that Stubbs was put there by somebody who already knew roughly what was going to happen before Bernard got there. And that is not Charlotte, who slowly moved away from Dolores.
Yeah.
That is Serac, who, as he said, knew ages ago that this was all going to happen. So that seems to be, as far as I'm concerned, the most likely candidate.
I guess also, like, it could be entertained that Dolores may have done that, like as a failsafe or something, but yeah.
It's not. I don't think that Stubbs is central to this.
Yeah,
but Stubbs is an interesting little extra thing that we've got going on. Somebody who has been central to previous seasons, but seems to be quite peripheral to this season, is Bernard. Now, I would love. We had some questions earlier about Bernard as to whether the encryption data might be in Bernard. Now, Bernard has got, just so everyone's on the same page here. So Bernard was rebuilt, it would appear, from Dolores's memories, which makes him slightly different from just like a pearl that's had the data put in there. He seems to have a slightly different pearl. He has got a slightly reddish tinted pearl. And that seems to be one that can take more data. It was used for the host human hybrids. So the hints are that maybe he's Arnold as well as being Bernard, because Dolores remembers both of them. His story seems so far this season to be always just like one step behind Dolores, which doesn't seem to kind of fit very well. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't work, sort of add up. He spent most of the first couple of episodes doing checks on himself to see whether Dolores was doing something in his system, and then stopped doing it. He seems to be just following her hints about where he should go now. Oh, look, why didn't you go to this facility? There's William. Wonder what Dolores is up to, and all the rest of it. So there are huge amounts of mysteries about Bernard. I don't for one second believe that he is as peripheral as he appears to be. It wouldn't surprise me if we've been looking at him in two timelines, or two, a simulation and reality. But I would love your take on this one, Bernard. What's going on with? Hax. What's going on with Bernard?
Yeah. So I think that it's very possible that he has the key. I think that, Martin, Dolores has this line like, "You're the only one who can't be replaced," which has great implications and means that he is vitally a part of this plan to undo humanity that Dolores has come up with. And I think that it's either the key, or a lot of things this season has hinted to this idea of Arnold, right? And we even have a shot in one of the episodes. It starts the episode with Arnold inside of the cradle with Dolores saying, "Oh my God, this is my house. It's finished. How did that happen?" Right? And it's never come up again. We never see this again. It's the only time like we really get this interaction, and it has to mean something. I mean, like, it has to mean something, right? So I think it's possible that Arnold was rebuilt inside of Bernard. And that's kind of like, there's this duality of people, one more aligned with Dolores and her plans and the preservation of her, while also, allowing Bernard to be his own independent person. We even in the last episode, so William is like, easy, Bernard. You're not a saint. You are no Arnold. Like, to show exactly how good of a person Arnold was, but also kind of like directly saying, hey, maybe pay attention. Maybe he is Arnold, right? In some capacity. I think it's possible. There's also the line about being of two minds that Martin says to Bernard outright. Like, you've always kind of been of two minds, Bernard. 100% possible. 100% possible that it's simply discussing the encryption key or decryption key.
Yeah. I mean, definitely there are two people in Bernard in some way. There are way too many hints about it. What you're saying, Connells was saying to him about you've always been in two minds. That he takes that clicker thing off of him and just sort of like says, so you don't switch, or worse to that effect. Then also back in episode 1, we get this time when those guys were about to beat him up, and he's lying down there and he clicks the thing and says, "Remember who you are," and then clicks it, and then turns into this super mode where he can suddenly beat up all the bad guys. There are clearly two people in some way within Bernard, and he seems to know that. It's not like some big surprise to him. I think that yes, it makes sense from what, as you said, when Dolores was saying he's the only one that's not expendable. He has got the encryption key to the Sublime. This is where all the hosts are. This is where so Bernard is wandering around with all of the host data within him. That is why he's irreplaceable. Now, I think the big question is what's going on with the two Bernards thing. I like this idea that it's Bernard and Arnold, but at the same time, which one of the two of them is this expert fighter? I'm not entirely sure either of them are, really. So I think some of what we've been seeing is in the simulation. Some of it isn't in the simulation. But what we can be sure on is the fact that, or at least I think we can be sure on, is the fact that he has got the encryption data within him, and that Dolores has created him in order to play a role in this final episode. Because at the moment, he's not actually played a role.
Yeah.
He has to play a role in this final episode.
Yeah, and I think it's also possible that maybe it's the fifth Dolores. Maybe, Dolores Prime is inside of Bernard as well.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And then we get who's the fifth Pearl, who's the Berlin Pearl, so to speak. Which, I mean, it will all, as with all of these speculations, they may well be looking very stupid in a few hours' time. But my gut instinct is that is the Dolores who's been running things from Berlin, well away from everything else, in Dolores's ear and all the rest of it. So that seems to have been what's been going on there. Okay, we're starting to draw to a close now. So let's get to big theories. So if I had to put you on the spot, Hax, what do you think is going to happen in this? And I should say, guys, in the chat, this is probably a good time to put any final questions down there. We'll try and pick another couple out before we go. But what's your big theory on what's going to happen in this final episode?
I think that we will get a shot of Dolores before she creates Bernard coming up with this master plan. How she knows so much information, how she knows to go after Caleb, and he just happens to be this person that's also the passed pawn to start the revolution of the world. I think that there's probably a crucial scene that we need to fill in some blanks there. I also think that, honestly, the idea of Caleb dying for the cause, becoming this martyr, the oppressors becoming so openly, like Serac being someone that the world knows and can fear and go after at this point, is really interesting to me, because he's been so, about his privacy and exposing him to the world and exposing who this person is that has been, pulling the strings. It's not just Insight, where like you see the graffiti of anti-Insight. It's him, right? It's not just observing humanity, it's controlling humanity. And I think that there's something interesting there. I also think that we'll probably get some kind of reveal about, probably Stubbs. Again, my whole theory from the very beginning is that Dolores is mastermind of this season, and she has it mapped out. I trust that she knows what she's doing. And again, I think now probably a big part of that is Holores's plan. And I think Dolores will be the new Dolores moving forward. And I think the implications of that are pretty cool.
Yeah, I love all of that. So my sort of overarching takes, which I've kind of hinted at through this live stream, are that what we've got is a reasonable amount of this season has been in the simulation, where the mirror world that Rehoboam has been running. I think that a reasonable amount of it is Serac / Rehoboam gaming. How do we stop all of this happening? And he's using Maeve as the way to do that, because Maeve is the person who can control the hosts, and so he's been gaming, how do I use Maeve to do this? I think that Rehoboam's big blind spot is that humanity can improve and can be better. So we are going to see the kind of turning point of this final episode of someone, probably Caleb, being a better person than Rehoboam expects, and that catching Rehoboam and Serac by surprise. So that seems to tie in with where we're at. Where there was this shot, which I think, for me, this was the biggest giveaway that we had in the promo, which was this shot of Caleb sat down with Serac next to him, looking up at Rehoboam, and Maeve tied in to Rehoboam in some way. That seems to me to imply that that Serac sees that Caleb is there, captures him, and just shows him these different options. This is what might be happening to humanity. These are the different things. What do you want to do? And I think that Caleb chooses an unexpected option. That seems to me to be where that is going. The clip that we've had for a couple of episodes now that they've not picked up on, so must be in the final episode, is of Dolores with all of the tubes into her, kind of screaming and all the rest of it. That seems to me to be her being hooked up to Solomon in some way. So we're going to have Maeve hooked up to Rehoboam and Dolores hooked up to Solomon in some way. And then we're going to get what appears to be these two coming up against each other. And I love this idea you've got with Charlotte, of that she is the person who is salvaging the hosts to take on into season 4, because I think that she was right when she was on the phone and she was saying, you know what, Dolores' plan is that we're all expendable.
Yeah.
We've already seen that Sato was expendable, Connells was expendable, she was supposed to die within like this big inferno. Dolores, what we have thought of as Dolores Prime, she effectively killed herself with that EMP. So they're all expendable, but I think Charlotte is now trying to save them all. So I think that is what is going on there. And we are going to be left with season 4 as to picking up the pieces of the destruction, and I think it will be a destruction of this constructed world that we've got here for humanity that we've seen in season 3. So season 4 is about how do we actually try and build a world with these two different races coexisting in some way.
Love it.
Let's go to the chat. We've got about enough time for a couple of questions. Is there anything that either you want to add to that, or that you've noticed in the chat as we've been going through?
Just saw a question about do you think the humans in cold storage under Solomon are still alive or did they die? We talked about this a little bit ago. Could be either. I think they're personally dead though.
Yeah, I think I go along with that. Again, I don't think that we've had any evidence conclusively one way or the other. I think one question I would pick up on, which I've seen a couple of times. I noted it down here and we didn't ask it, but the maze symbols. So we've had a maze symbol. This is out in the real world. We've had a maze symbol which was in that underpass that Caleb and Dolores met up in. There's also in the trailers, one of the promo for this next episode, somebody seems to be spray painting it on a wall. I think the question here is whether this is just a symbolic thing and trying to link across between what's going on with humanity and what was going on with the hosts, or whether there is something meta going on here, something big. Do you think that this is just a symbolic thing, or do you think that there is something else going on that we need to be aware of?
I think it's probably symbolic. I think that, when Akecheta picked this up, when Akecheta saw this maze and this journey to consciousness, and it ultimately was this thing that made him start questioning his reality. So it's kind of implied that now that the world has been opened up and the people are able to question their reality, that maybe they have naturally come to their equivalent of this maze. It could be symbolic. It could be more, but I don't know. I think maybe we entertain the possibility that this is kind of a motif for humanity finding itself, becoming free through realizing what insight has done to them.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that one. It's symbolic more than anything else. I don't think we're trying to see. I mean, this isn't Ford as much as I think for the first half of this season I was there hoping that we would get a bit of Anthony Hopkins, but no, this is not Ford extending his influence out over the outside world. But I think that is where we are going to wrap it all up. I think that, as I said, we've got so many questions. I could have carried on, and I'm sure we both could have carried on this discussion right the way until the beginning of the episode. But the key thing here is that there is so much they cannot possibly, I think, wrap it up in one, even if it is an extended episode. It's about an hour and a quarter, I think. Even in an extended episode, they're not going to wrap this up. They're looking beyond this. They're looking to season 4 to be taking a few of these threads forward. Okay, why don't you remind people where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, and real quick, I just want to throw one more thing out before I do that. Sure. So contact lenses and augmented reality and holograms and stuff like this has been a huge part of the season. The very first shot that we ever see is this augmented reality with Insight and the Investor. The next shot, it's then used against him. We see the glasses glued to William's face, to Caleb's face, this therapy, this, it's everywhere. Holograms are everywhere. I have to imagine that there's going to be some big reveal about somebody's journey or some kind of twist with this technology. Because essentially you can, William was made to believe that he was in a room by him, that he wasn't in a room by himself for this entire conversation. X amount of time has gone by, and then he wakes up to find in reality he was in a room this whole time. I think that there could be a cool twist with that later on. But just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you so much for having me, Robert. This entire season has been amazing. I love it. I'm so happy, sad about this, season coming to an end, but it's been great. I look forward to it with high hopes, and you can find my videos at Hax Dogma on YouTube, on Twitter, Hax Dogma, Patreon. I also have a book called Cyclic on Amazon if you're interested, And again, I just became an affiliate on twitch.tv. So if you're interested in any gaming content or video editing, you can find me there as well.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute delight. I'm going to do one more of these. Actually, I haven't asked Hax whether he's available. I'm not going to put him on the spot now, but I'm going to do one more of these this time next week. So just to round up the season, everything that happened in the final episode, because I'm sure that we will need to be discussing some stuff after this last episode. I'm going to make you disappear for a moment, as always, Hax, just while I point at things. Guys, if you are at all interested in my other content, if you like what I do with Westworld, if you're interested in what I do with other things, then there's going to be a link appearing up here to my, what should we make it this week? My Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire content is going to be appearing up here somewhere. If you appreciate this channel, if you want to support this channel, if you want to get access to some stuff I do just for my patrons, there's going to be a link appearing somewhere here for that. Or if you want to get access to my second channel, Classic Science Fiction, there's a link appearing somewhere up here. Okay, guys, that's all for this time. Thank you so much for coming on again, Hax. It's been an absolute delight. It's been my honor all the way through to have you here through the season. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the episode, and I will see you again next week.
Bye, everybody.